right, guys, welcome back to Revive School. Here we are, lesson 31, but really we're in our second lesson of the book of Psalms, Psalms 4, 5, and 6. A little quiz for everybody today. Kevin, do you remember what the rabbis used to call the book of Psalms before it was the Septuagint?
Nope.
That's not what they call it, Kevin.
I don't remember though.
Tom, way to go. Praises. And yet, here's the weird thing. Today's going to be a psalm of lament. What you're going to see, and we talked about this yesterday, it's going to be like this constant, it's going to change. Emotions are going to be here and then here. And today, well, let's talk about, yesterday we got to talk about a messianic psalm. You know, a psalm that's talking about, hey, by the way, I need you to kiss the Son. I need you to pay respect and homage to the Son, because if you don't, wrath is coming. Obviously, it's here and now. And so I just want to keep saying this. You're going to have a vertical or a horizontal perspective and a horizontal perspective, okay? Just, it's simple, it sounds obvious. So in other words, you have a temporal mindset, and then you really have an eternal mindset. In other words, it's horizontal. And why this is important is because whenever you can get like this in life, honestly, you'll begin to get to walk with the Lord. All right, so here we are, Psalm 4, 5, and 6. Again, we're only going to be teaching on one psalm today. So now let me give you a backdrop of Psalm 5, okay? It's a lament psalm with elements, as MacArthur says, two different things, okay? One is there's a declaration of innocence. So David is just saying, I'm innocent. Like, that's the mentality. But then he also goes into this lament psalm, and he's just saying, I have confidence in the Lord because I believe you're going to answer my prayers for protection. So in Psalm 5, you really are going to see two main things, okay? You're going to see David's plea of innocence, and then you're also going to see his confidence, okay, in his prayers. And specifically, what he's going to be praying for is for protection, okay? Now, when I flip my sheet over here, you have to understand something. We don't know exactly the period of time that he was writing this. Maybe during the crisis when Absalom was chasing him. Many people would say, if you read enough of the commentaries, they would say there's a really good chance that this is the time, but again, we cannot prove this. We do know that there was a time marked by enemies who were verbally opposed to him and pursuing him. Okay, so that's kind of the mentality of him writing what he's been writing. Now, I think it's interesting. In the Old Testament, you'll see this. There's going to be a blessing or a curse that's going to appeal to God to do what the curse or blessing specified. So like as he's going through this, God, I need you to curse this person. I need you to bless this person. Now, when David's enemies hurled curses at him, they believed that those divine curses called on divine power to destroy him. So hence, you can see how he's saying, I'm innocent and I have confidence in my prayer that God's going to answer my prayers, not yours. Right? That's really what it comes down to. And here's what I love, and I think if we can remember this in all of the 150 chapters, I love what Warren Wiersbe says, that no matter the amount of danger, okay, listen to this, it should never keep us from our time of prayer. And in fact, because we are in a time of danger, we should constantly be praying. So here David is in a time of distress, and what is he doing? He's talking to the Lord. Some of us have different outlets when we go through distress. Some of us have different outlets when we go through these things. We said this with Job. Job modeled how he could talk to the Lord amidst when life is not good. Please don't turn to the bottle. Please don't turn to pornography. Please don't turn to spending habits. Please don't turn to anything except crying out to the Lord. So having said that, let's begin to dig into the Word of God. It says in Psalm 5, remember, this is for the choir director. And by the way, make sure, choir, when you're singing, make sure there's flutes. I love that it's put there, with the flutes, a Davidic psalm. And so in verses 1 through 3, Nelson just breaks this up into a really simple category. One is that we prepare to meet the Lord. In verses 1 through 3, he says this, listen to my words, Lord. Listen, my sighing. You guys ever been around somebody that goes,
Yes.
Anybody?
Yeah.
He said, Lord, I need you to listen to my... In other words, another different way of putting it is, I need you to give ear. Please don't forget Please don't forget me amidst all of this. I need you, Lord, I need you to tune in this whole process. And in fact, in verse 2, he says, I need you to pay attention. Pay attention to the sound of my cry, my King and my God, for I pray to you. This word cry, it's this, you're constantly talking to him. You're meditating on the word. You have this incessant groaning that you're literally just like, it's almost like, just take this from me. David may have been the anointed king at that time, but he understood who the ultimate king was. He understood he needed somebody way bigger than him to help. And so look what he says in verse 3. And we have used this, you guys, verse 3, in so many revived cities that we've gone to. So many early morning prayer times, so many late night prayer times. We've used Psalm 5:3 as our theme verse for praying. And it says this, at daybreak, Lord, this is David, you hear my voice. At daybreak, I plead my case to you, and I watch expectantly. Some would call, just even right now, they would call this even a morning psalm. It's a morning psalm that it points us to creating a habit. It helps us, a person, to dedicate, like all the activities of the day, we give it to the Lord. So as we wake up in the morning, before we, maybe even hit the shower, I don't know, maybe before we hit the gym, maybe before we have breakfast, before you check your phone, whatever it is, what we're saying is could you come before the Lord and present to him everything that you're thinking? Like everything. Have you guys ever not prayed in the morning and noticed that you didn't pray during that day? I have. Like I have noticed when I don't have my morning time with the Lord. My attitude, my thoughts, if it's 5 minutes or if it's an hour, it's just kind of this, I really noticed the difference. And what I love about David is he says, I'm coming before you. And look, I'm preparing. He said, I'm getting ready to meet you. Now I want to go over this, what this looks like. He had a morning appointment with the Lord. And I think this is a cool statement. Nothing interfered with it. When we make it negotiable, it really impacts our day. I love this mentality, Psalm 55, though many are against me, he will redeem me from my battle unharmed. David knew when everything was coming against him, he had to talk to the Lord. He had to trust the Lord in this process. Psalm 59:17 has the same mentality. Psalm 59 verse 17 says, to you, my strength, I sing praises because God is my stronghold, my faithful God. What you could do is literally take all the Davidic Psalms, pull them out, and you'll begin to see a theme of David just constantly talking to the Lord. Constantly talking to the Lord, constantly talking to the Lord. So here's what I want to just say is one, sorry, I just put some dots, is that David was faithful. David was faithful. That's pretty much self-explanatory. David is faithful to his task. And then here's the crazy thing, and this might offend some people, and you're going to be like, oh, that's legalism. David was orderly and systematic in his prayers. Look at this. He says, at daybreak, I plead my case to you and I watch expectantly. In other words, you have a word that says, I direct. I direct my case to you. I watch with expectation. This word direct, it describes, listen to this. This is a really cool image for me of my prayer life, how I want to get it there. It's not like this is being described. I wish it was, but not like this. He says this word direct, okay? So David, I think this is a fair statement. Everybody understands. He's laying it all. I'm pleading my case. God, I expect you to answer, right? That's pretty much, I'm pleading it and now I wait. This word direct, okay, which is implying that, describes the placing of pieces of animal sacrifices in order on the altar. It's that same word. That word direct is literally putting the pieces of animal sacrifices on the altar, as it talks about in Leviticus. So it's very systematic in what I'm doing. Okay? At the same time, this same word direct, it describes the arranging of the wood in Genesis 22 on the altar. So here you have pieces of animals for the sacrifice. Now you're talking about directing and putting the pieces of wood. Now look at this one in Leviticus 24. That same word is the placing of the loaves of bread on the table in the tabernacle. So now you're putting the animals there, you're putting the wood there, you're putting the bread there. And so every single component, it's in verse 8, Leviticus 24:8, it's talking about this. The bread is to be set out before the Lord every Sabbath day as a perpetual covenant obligation on the part of the Israelites. So hopefully you're starting to see this image. And let me give you one more and then I'll slow down here for a second. Psalm 23, verse 5, same word. You prepare a table before me. That you're getting things ready. I love this image. So imagine if all of a sudden in our prayer life, we're actually presenting to the Lord all of these components that we're laying on our heart, that's on our heart. Like, be specific. According to this prayer of David, he's super specific in his prayers. Think about it another way. Same mentality in the military. Soldiers presented themselves to their commanders to receive orders in order to walk out the battle out on the field. So it's very specific, I'm directing, this is what's happening. And in my prayer life, I've actually heard people be like, not everybody says this, so don't take it the wrong way. Like some people are like, you can't pray specifically for those things because maybe that's not in God's wheelhouse. Maybe that's not what God wants. According to this prayer, you can totally pray like that. God, this is really on my heart that my daughter, Nadia, would develop 3 good friends at her school. Or that my little boy, Jude, would be have peace while he's out on the recess, out playing at recess. Like, that sounds so specific and so strange. Like, why would you pray? Like, I plead my case in the morning, and now I'm going to expect you to show up during the day.
It's because he knows who his king and his God is. And so he can lay it out directly. And he watches expectantly. That doesn't mean he watches it expectantly to come exactly the way he thinks it is, but how God lays it out.
There's no way that we could, I'll just go there. I could spend all day on this verse right here. My wife and I, this is one of the craziest stories personally. My wife and I, we had 3 kids, Maya, Nadia, and Selah, and we were praying whether or not we should have our 4th kid, Jude. We didn't know it was going to be Jude, but we were hoping it was a boy. And so my wife just said, hey, 2 months, Lord. We're going to give you 2 months. If we don't get pregnant within these 2 months, we're done having kids. That was kind of our, should we keep going, having more kids? And 2 months. So she told her one friend in Ukraine. That's it. Nobody in America, no family, no friends, nothing. Just a one friend in Ukraine. Would you pray? We're praying about whether or not we should have a child. And oh, by the way, if we have a child, here's our second prayer request. We need a different vehicle because the SUV that I was driving had 5. So you go from family of 5 to 6. Kevin, what happens?
No room.
No room in the inn that drives. And so we prayed that we'd get pregnant and that the God would provide a vehicle. And if, either one of those don't happen, then we just know, okay, Lord, it's fine. We were at the National Day of Prayer. Town Revive was hosting the National Day of Prayer in Dallas at our old place on Coit and Arapahoe before Walmart came in. So we hosted the City of Dallas National Day of Prayer in the parking lot. We had the stage set up. We had the sound system set up. And at the very end, I had gotten a text that said, hey, would you, this was a friend of ours, would you meet us at your house after this meeting, after the prayer time? I was like, sure. And I just thought, just because they were participating in the prayer time, let's just meet at our house. Our house was like less than 5 minutes away. And so I drove back to my house. And in my driveway was a van with a big red bow on it. Like kind of one of those you see on commercials. It was in my driveway. And I looked at Laura and I was like, what? It had 70 miles, you guys. It was a 2011 Honda Odyssey. Why do I have no problem telling you this? Because God completely, ridiculously showed up. Now, there's one catch to the story. We weren't pregnant at the time. So in my mind, God's going to tell us that we're pregnant and then, give us a vehicle. He gave us a vehicle and I looked at Laura. I go, hey, Laura, are you pregnant? She goes, not that I know of. And I love this story because within that 2-month time frame, my wife had gotten pregnant. And, you can say, oh, that's a fleece. Well, Gideon did it. Like, it's not for prosperity. It's not for like, hey, what can I get? What can I get? It's honestly, you guys, like we're just trying to walk out life. And God, we need you to walk with us in this process. I'm going to plead before you, God, would you allow us to get pregnant and would you provide a vehicle? I didn't think it was going to be a 2011 van. I didn't know that it was going to be a boy or a girl. Like there's certain things I'm like, God, I'm pleading my case and now I'm going to ask you to show up. And honestly, if you go back to David, he's faithful in his prayers and he's orderly and he's systematic. Maybe some of you need to start being a little bit more specific in your prayers. Really. Some of you actually need to be like, okay, God, my child is having a hard time with his studies in college. I mean, specifically ask the Lord for whatever you're asking for, like a tutor. Like, get specific, get orderly and systematic in this prayers. And oh, by the way, God's going to show up. Now, how he shows up, I don't know. When he shows up, I don't know. But I don't want us to miss this component of our prayer life. And so if you're watching, and maybe you haven't got into a routine of praying. Maybe your routine is you get up and you check your computer and you check your emails and you check the stocks from yesterday. Maybe just slow down for a second and just come before the Lord at daybreak and plead your case before Him and just watch this be a year of miracles. Whew. He wants to show up in your life. And so prepare to meet the Lord. Nelson's continues on in verses really 4 through 6. It's in this process. Well, we'll get there. Try this. Number 2, we not only do we prepare to meet the Lord, but then we seek to please the Lord. And remember, David is in distress, right? And right now, he's just crying out to the Lord. Like, let's not make this harder than what it is. He's crying out to the Lord because something is not good. And then look what he says. In verse 4, he says, "For you are not a God who delights in wickedness. Evil cannot dwell within you. The boastful cannot stand in your presence. You hate all evil doers." That word hate, okay? I mean, God, it's almost like he has to remind God, like, of all of these things. He has to remind God of all of these things that he's against. Why? Because he's building his case, right? He's building his case about what he wants God to do. He's building his case. God, I need you to hear my heart. I love how David works. I love this. And we can learn from him. David is crying out to the Lord saying, oh, by the way, I need you to pay attention. My life's not going so well. And God, do you remember? You hate evildoers. Do you remember? You hate the proud. Oh, by the way, in verse 6, you destroy those who tell lies. God, you abhor a man of bloodshed and treachery. God, do you remember all these things? Like, it's really a fun process. Like, he is setting the table. And you know what he's saying? I'm not those guys. God, hear my cry, hear my prayer. And God, you hate all of those things, which I'm not. That's what he's saying, because what he's going to ask for a whole lot more from this. And so all I want to just say is, well, how do you, if you're not those things, if you're not prideful in his presence, if you're not, the evildoers, if you're not telling lies, then how do we not do those things? You know what I mean? Like, how do we please the Lord and be the opposite? Now, I love what Wiersbe says is, well, one is just make it really simple. Please remember to fear him. Psalm 147, verse 11, Kevin. What David is doing is he's building a case, and he's doing it beautifully. He says the Lord values those who fear him, those who put their hope in his faithful love. He's saying, by the way, you guys, like, because these people don't do these things, I do these things. And so how do I do these things? Well, one, I fear him. He also says you offer sincere praises. Kevin, if you go to Psalm 69, verse 31. Psalm 69, verse 31 says, that will please Yahweh more than an ox, more than a bull with horns and hooves. Like, this praises to him, that's what pleases him more than these offerings, more than these sacrifices. Hebrews 11:6, David doesn't write this, but we need to understand in the process, you have to have faith. I had this conversation with somebody on the phone yesterday. They're nervous because we're interacting with, quote unquote, the enemy. And when I say the enemy, it's a different political party than what they're used to. And the reality is, you guys, we have nothing to be afraid of. Walk by faith. Without faith, it is impossible to please God. So how do you please the Lord? You fear him. You offer up praises. You have faith in this. And for us in the new covenant, you know what we need to do? We need to identify with his son. We have to identify who the king is. right? This is the process. David shows us this. He reveals this to us, right? My King and my God, I pray to you. Like when we have this kind of understanding, then we won't give into the things that David just described. But what when we don't fear him, you guys, and you're more about pleasing man, we become these people that he's describing. When you don't walk in faith, guess what? It becomes more about yourself and you begin to walk in pride. When you don't identify with the Son, guess what? You become a person that actually represents Satan because he's a father of lies. So you either have two camps, and what David is saying is, I'm not those people. This is who I am. I'm pleasing you, God. So we prepare to meet the Lord, and then we seek to please the Lord, and then it just gets kind of fun from here. And in verse 7, he wants to describe something. And Nelson's puts it well, we submit to the Lord. And that closes out verses 7 through 12. But he says, but I enter your house by the abundance of your faithful love. I bow down toward your holy temple in reverential awe of you. Now remember, Kevin, usually who's the only one that can go into the temple?
The high priest.
The high priest. So there's this mentality of, because at that time, David's in the process of the temple building, of the timing. And David just says, look, man, as I'm pleasing to you, I'm submitting myself to you. He says, Lord, lead me in your righteousness because of my adversaries. Make your way straight before me. I think this is a really, it's a powerful picture because he's talking about the power of prayer, but now he's also saying, but may I live it out. So he's not just staying in the prayer closet. He's saying, God, I need you to help me walk this thing out. Kevin, if you go to Psalm 119, verses 1 through 5. Psalm 119, 1 through 5, it says, how happy are those whose ways is blameless, who live according to the Lord's instruction. Happy are those who keep his decrees and seek him with all of their heart. Verse 3, they do nothing wrong, they follow his ways. You have commanded that your precepts be diligently kept. And then in verse 5, if only my ways were committed to keeping your statutes. What you're going to see in Psalm 119 is all about walking the straight and narrow. And that's what he's saying. God, I need your help in this process. It's kind of a cool picture here. And so in this process, he says, we submit to the Lord. And I just want to just write these couple prayers down. One is there's a prayer for guidance, right? That's where we just went to. And then you're going to see, Kevin, if you'll go to verse 9, for there's nothing reliable in what they say. Destruction is within them. Their throat is an open grave. They flatter with their tongue. So now all of a sudden he's asking for a prayer for guidance, prayer for justice. Go back to the earlier prayer. He set all this up, did he not? God, I'm coming before you at daybreak. I'm going to wait expectantly that you're going to answer my prayer. And oh, by the way, God, the things and the people that I'm going to actually have prayer for or prayer against, I want you to understand I'm not in that category. So it's all of this. In some way, David's a political guy and he's playing the card well before the Lord. He's setting it all up so that God would respond. And then he says, here, God, look, I'm praying that I would continue to stay on this path, right? That I don't go back to this direction. But the people that aren't walking this way, God, I'm going to ask for justice. And in fact, he says in verse 9, there's nothing reliable in what they're saying. God, bring about destruction. Their throat is an open grave. They flatter themselves with their tongues. I mean, it's this crazy hoof and mouth deal, right? They walk and talk, and neither one of them are walking it out well. In fact, the Apostle Paul in Romans 3 actually references, in Romans 3 verse 13, he actually references this whole issue. He says, their throat is an open grave. They deceive with their tongues. Viper's venom is under their lips. Paul is quoting David from Psalm 5. Because what David was experiencing, so was Paul. There's a lot here with the Romans 3. It actually goes, honestly, through 10 through 18, and it talks about 14 different things that the evil, quote-unquote, side people are going through. And you know what David's asking for? Crush them. In fact, it says in verse 10, punish them, God. Let them fall by their own schemes. Drive them out because of their many crimes, for they rebel against you. All right, somebody out there is like, see, that's why I don't like the Bible. They're praying that the enemy gets crushed. They're praying that God would wipe them out. Yeah, he totally prayed that. This is the word I was having a hard time saying earlier, imprecatory psalm. It seems like, okay, that God is a God of wrath who can hardly wait to destroy sinners. Like, this is what it feels like. And then at the same time, it seems like people are seeking terrible revenge against their enemies. Like, this is what we just read in Psalm 5, right? This is what it appears. Hey, God, I can't wait till you, I'm expecting that you're going to bring this about. And people are like, that's not right. All I want to just do is just very simply just understand this. Constable says it well. Enemies that are destroyed at that time are rebels against the Lord. Okay? And remember, we talked about this, the anointed. Did we not even talk about this, you guys, in Psalm 2? That there will be people that come against the Lord and against the anointed. And crazy enough, Jews were a covenant people. Hang in here, okay? That when God promised to protect them as long as they obeyed Him. So this whole psalm in Psalm 5 is actually just reiterating God's promise. God, if we walk in your path, if we walk in your truth, you are actually obligated to protect us. We're your people. Wipe them out. So in my prayer life, God, I'm showing you I'm pleasing you. I'm showing you I'm actually in line with what you're asked. Now I need you to do what you're going to do. And God promised to bless those who blessed His people. And as weird as this sounds, God will continue to do that. God will continue to bless those who bless Him. Genesis 12:3, it says it very clearly. If you bless my people, I will bless you. If you curse my people, I will curse you. All David is doing is he's simply reminding God, God, I need you to be a God that remembers your promise. Why? Because God has chosen Israel as His people. If you're trying to figure it out, scratch your head. The only thing I can tell you is that there's 66 books that prove it, that God's not done with them yet. And David says, I wait expectantly for you to answer my prayers. And then he says, and he closes it out in verse 11, but let all who take refuge in you rejoice. In other words, hey, take care of them and protect me. Let all who take refuge in you rejoice. Let them shout for joy forever. May you shelter them, and may those who love your name boast about you. Praise God. In verse 12, for you, Lord, bless the righteous one. You surround him with favor like a shield. If I had one more lesson, I would just say, don't miss this verse. For you, Lord, bless the righteous one. What do you know? That ultimately points to Him. Who's Him? Yep. The anointed one, the righteous one, King Jesus. All right, guys. This is Psalm 5, Wisdom Books, Lesson 31. We'll talk to you tomorrow. Thanks.